Okay, okay. I think if nobody else has any sort of questions, what I will do, Aaron, Dan, thank you very much for the presentation. I will
Sure.
move this across to Russ, I believe. Russ, are we available? Are we here?
I'm here. I'm here.
Grand, perfect. If you pop your
Let's.
video on for us,
Yeah, it
we'll
should
then
be coming
get
up
you
here.
started, I reckon.
All
The
right.
camera
Well.
will decide when it wants to do it. Normally takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Russ, if you want to go for it, I'll keep an eye on things. We'll go from there.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So I guess for anyone that does not know who I am, my name is Russ Basiura, and I've been working with I'll call it the Microsoft platform since before probably many of you were born, to be honest. I first got involved building document management systems in 1995, literally on the Windows 3.1 platform, and have been, involved with um, Microsoft ever since then. But I got involved with SharePoint before it was SharePoint. It used to be called Site Server, or at least Site Server was a predecessor to SharePoint. And I was part of the product development teams, basically from a testing perspective. But I had the opportunity to work with Joe Olson and all at that point in time. And I got involved. So I got involved with SharePoint very early, but I was building secure extranets for the pharmaceutical industry, and putting SharePoint in that environment, which it really wasn't intended to be, but for what we were doing, it served a good purpose. And anyway, I stayed on the sides for a while of doing both security, like penetration testing, and policy development and those type of firewall builds and all for pharmaceuticals for a while. But then I was doing more and more SharePoint work. And in 2005, I had a consulting company, but basically in 2005, I focused it entirely on SharePoint. And then in 2007, they released, the honestly what was the first real version of SharePoint. The other ones were, they're good, but they had pros and cons to them, and they were making big changes in terms of how it stored data and all between the different versions and version controlling how that was done. So a lot of things changed, but starting with 2007, we really had what I was called the basis for a good product maturity at that point. And so I stayed involved with it. I was involved with just doing SharePoint until I guess about 2015. And then I got out of it, and I spent a couple years basically just with my family, and going different places, doing different things, and basically helping raise my kids. And then I guess I started getting an itch and all. And at about the same time, I started hearing about Teams, and got involved with that pretty early. And I guess I kind of got bored with SharePoint to a certain extent, in that it was not as collaborative as I wanted to see at that point in time. And but when Teams came along with sitting Teams on top of SharePoint, it gave you just a much more of a real-time collaboration environment. And that's what was exciting to me. And the marrying of those capabilities with all the benefits that we've gotten from SharePoint, OneDrive, that whole platform, with the real-time collaboration and communication capabilities, and the way it changes the way people work, or should be changing the way people work, was just something that's been very exciting and just got my passion going. And also I've been driving that for a long time. In parallel to that, I've done a lot of stuff with the community. A colleague of mine at Microsoft, Mike Giannotti, he really started the first SharePoint user group on the planet. He had one meeting, and then he got transferred down to Louisiana or somewhere in the South. And I was in the position to basically pick up that user group. And I ran that user group for 10 plus years at that point. And the interesting thing about it is that that whole time I was running it, and even up until, I guess it was about 6 months ago when we did the last Teams 10X event, I had Mike and Joel come back, and we were talking about how we got to meet each other and all. And Mike says, "Oh, by the way, do you know that was the first SharePoint user group on the planet?" And I went, what? Like, okay, I had no idea the whole time I was running it and all. So it just, I from that led into when I got back into teams, doing teams and doing, these events, which led to what was Teams Day Online and is now known as Teams 10X. And we have our we do two big events a year. Our big event is coming up next week on Wednesday and Thursday, and we've got 70 different speakers and 8 tracks running. Dan is speaking, and it's just a great community event, and we have that. So that's teams10x.com. It's 2 afternoons, basically, Wednesday and Thursday, and talking about everything you'd want to know about teams. So that's kind of how I got to where I'm at today. So I wanted to just kind of from there, I told you about, how teams got me excited about it. And, in the last year, Microsoft is really focused on releasing, it's Microsoft Viva and building out that platform. And Viva is doing for customers what SharePoint did for customers in 2007. And what I mean by that is I'd go into a meeting and like with 2000, when you're talking about 2003 and all going back to that version, people, their eyes would glass over. They couldn't connect the value to the business benefit of what SharePoint was delivering until you got to like the automations and those type of things that came as part of the 2007 product. Then things started clicking a little bit, and you'd go into a room and you'd demo something and it'd be like the light bulb's going off. Well, that's now happening again with Teams. And when I say with Teams, it's really Teams, Viva, SharePoint, the whole Microsoft platform. And let me share with you what I wanted to basically just kind of give you an introduction to. And some of you may know a lot about this already, but I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a foundation for what Viva is. And Viva was initially 4 modules. It's now up to about 10 or 11 modules, I believe. At least not in terms of what's actually been released, but what they've announced in terms of being planned, and they keep adding to it. So, but it is their Microsoft Employee Experience platform, and it integrates with Teams, SharePoint, and the whole Microsoft 365 platform. So Planner, Power BI, all of that it helps surface it. So what I'm showing you on the screen here it's actually done through Viva Connections. And Viva basically gives you the capability to bring your SharePoint home site into Teams. So and I'll show you just kind of a look at it, but let me move my screen down here a little bit so I can. So this is SharePoint inside of Teams here. Go back here a second. So this is our SharePoint Internet home site inside, and this is a Viva Connections logo. That basically when you click it or when you open it up, Teams will automatically load your SharePoint environment. But it also brings in the app bar functionality so that if you click on it a second time, you got all your navigation, gives you your recently visited sites, any type of news items, for quick access to that. Now, this is, you can see all your Teams functionality on the left-hand side here. So it's bringing those 2 platforms together for your users and creating what you at least should be hearing as that single pane looking glass into everything Microsoft 365. Going back to early versions of SharePoint, you would hear about the digital dashboard. Frankly, it was a nightmare. What they said could be done, you could do, but it was a big, huge effort to put together any type of employee digital dashboard. and it's been a long time coming, but with this platform, with what they've released, they've really got a an environment now that where a user can log in to Teams and spend most, if not all, of their day just working from within inside of Teams. I don't have it set up here, but one of the things, I've got Outlook integrated inside of my Teams client. So when I come in the morning, I don't go to Outlook anymore, not directly. I basically go into Teams and I've got everything I need there to do the work for the day. So, Teams is becoming that looking glass into everything. That is SharePoint, OneDrive, and Viva Connections is all that employee experience functionality. So to do this, well, let me just jump over here. So this is the regular SharePoint home site, so you can see this. So you've still got your app bar on the left-hand side here. You got all your navigation. And what I've done with this is if you're not familiar with it, there's a demo environment, which you can hit up. Basically, it's demo.microsoft.com, and you can create a tenant out there. And depending on your partner, if you're a partner or not, you have access to different capabilities. They do have some actual Viva tenants or SharePoint tenants that are completely built out for you. This one was a really bare bones environment that then I went in and I used a combination of SharePoint lookbook sites and templates to basically build out a lot of the functionality and sites and all between these different things. But there's a basics there to start with. That is all your Contoso electronics that you've probably all seen before. But you have your app bar over here. Now to set this up, there's a couple things additional that we can do here that I'm not showing. You can see it's just I've got my company news down here, but there is a dashboard inside of Viva Connections, and when you're in the process of setting up Viva Connections, you'll get an option over here to basically manage Viva Connections. And from this, when you first go in here, it'll say create your dashboard. Now I've already created one, so it's saying view the dashboard, but you have that capability here. To set up this home site, just a jump back a little bit, you have to basically come in under settings and define what your home site is. So it requires a communication site to begin with at your top level. But once you have that communication site built, you basically just have to come in here and define where the path is for that, what's going to be your home site. And it's just a one-step, fill in the URL, click save it, and you have your home site at that point. When you go back into your site, you have to set up what's global navigation under here also. So under here, and you make sure that that's enabled, and whether you want hub site or home site navigation, you can basically set that up. And what that does is that then gives you the capability to build out your global navigation, which is this navigation that's appearing in here, so you can control all of these options. Now, just jumping back to Teams a second, if we go over here again in our Teams environment, that's where, if you click on this, that's where these items and all are coming from. And these news items are all SharePoint news items that are aggregated, but there's a couple different types of news items that you can create now too. So jumping back over to my environment here. So there's different types of news items that can be created within this. So you can link out to an external news item. You can link out to a video. You can just create a regular news post in it. And basically all of that aggregates up from wherever it's been created within the environment. But let me show you the dashboard here. This actually is one that I think Microsoft built out in here. I think there might have been some things that I added, but you have the capability within this to basically there's different types of items that you can add onto this dashboard. So they're called cards, but it can be anything from a Teams app that you're adding in, tasks, Viva Learning, news items, approvals, assigned tasks, and then you've got a web link, which if you want to, just like actually one of the things I've been asked multiple times so far is they want to link out to ADP. But whatever type of system that you're using, if they have a third-party, SaaS system that they're using, and you need to just create a link for it, you can basically just do this, and you edit it right here and give it the link that you want to connect to. And I guess we'll use Microsoft.com, but basically just give it the path, and it goes out and pulls a description and everything for you, and then you can basically just save it. And when you republish this, or when you publish it up, it'll put that item on the dashboard, and now you can link out to it. So, from that example is very simple, obviously, but with the other ones that we have in here, go back here. If we go back to our dashboard here, there's a lot more functionality that you can actually build in with these. And probably one of the most powerful ones in here, well, there maybe arguably there's two really powerful ones. Your Teams app. So anything that you have defined as an app inside of Teams, you can actually pull inside of your dashboard here. So there are some things that just come up by default, but like, the Q&A app, Career Coach, Viva Learning, any of these items here are basically considered Teams apps that you can now just load directly in here, including Power Apps. So, there's a lot that you can do with that. So that's one. And then probably the other most powerful one is the card designer. And you can use adaptive cards with it. So I'm far from an expert around adaptive cards, but we have used them with Power Automate in terms of being able to send a custom form to the end user where they can, there's certain information that's presented to them, like on an expense report, or like maybe they're doing like a PTO request and they've got a certain number of hours available, that type of thing. They get that information can be surfaced up with that adaptive card and sent to them as part of the approval process for whoever would be approving that PTO request, to say this user has the amount of time available for PTO that they're requesting off. So it can be a very robust environment to basically build that. And that's, there is a card designer site and all for that to basically create those cards. So a lot you can do with that there. Now, just with this, I'm just going to republish this at this point. So from here, you can see actually here is a PTO example. That's jumping out to the adaptive card site. But there's other things that you can do within here, like create your approval request, and this will open up Teams directly so that you can do that. It'll show this one shows assigned tasks. And you can create these, different customizations with this. But this is kind of how the dashboard is laid out. And you have I think there's a max of like 20 items that you can put on the dashboard. But once you build this out, you then have the capability to go back to, if we go back to our landing site and we edit this page, we can basically take this and we can say, okay, well, I want to add in my dashboard here. And if you come down and, well, actually, let's just do a search. Just search for Viva here. We're going to get two different options, and we're actually going to add both of these in. But here's the dashboard option. And if you add that in there, now you basically have that dashboard that you're available there. And you can define this as to how many items that you want to display. So right now, it's just displaying 5. But you can go all the way up to 20 in terms of displaying items with that. So that you can see, now you've got a personalized dashboard for your end users. And each of these have audiences. Each of these cards can have an audience that's applied to it. So you can define who would see, the PTO request and who would see, so if, these are probably things you would want everybody, but if you're doing an expense request for a specific department, you can say, target this at just my audience for finance. And they would be the only ones that would see that. So, it's very powerful in terms of what you can deliver for users, and it's very quick to be able to build something out. So that's that. The other thing is the news that I was showing you, and let me just kind of figure out here, there we go. So if we basically go back in and do that Viva again, now you have the news feed. And what that does is that basically goes out and it's aggregating information from across the sites, depending on where it's created. So I'm going to publish this at this point, but now I've basically added my dashboard in over here, and I have all of those capabilities, but I also have my news feed in here that's aggregating information across my environment. So it can pull things from other SharePoint sites. So if you have a like a child hub, it can pull from there. It can pull from Yammer. It can pull from whatever type of news that you have in the environment. It can basically aggregate that information up and display it, and it puts it into a carousel that where you can display, determine, just navigate through those items. So I think that's most of what I wanted to cover in terms of just giving you an introduction to Viva Connections. The whole platform is very powerful, and Microsoft is constantly building into it. So it's going to be, in a lot of ways, I look at it as the next Teams. So that growth curve and all that we saw with Teams, you're going to see that type of thing happen with Viva also, as they keep building stuff into it. So any questions?
You sort of took my statement away there. If anybody in the chat has any questions about Russ's presentation, or if there are any in the LinkedIn chat, I'm not seeing any in the LinkedIn side of things. But if any of the panel have any questions for Russ, by all means, fire away.
Russ, where should people go to learn more?
Teams 10X.
Exactly. Next week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dan is presenting, but we've got, 2 full days of, content for everything related to Teams. And there is a Viva track on both days. And so, please come out and, learn with us. We'll learn from each other.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for presenting. Henry,
sure.
I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm not seeing any final questions unless anybody on the panel has a final question for us. In that case, I don't believe there's anything else on the schedule there at all. But Ami, I think you've got a question here. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's actually a remark, Ross. I think all of this would not be possible if we didn't have the modern appearance and in the communication sites and in the team sites, because the modern appearance is enabling all of this things if we compare to other on-premise SharePoint versions. So this is my comment, and your presentation was great.
Well, thank you. And I totally agree with you. I mean, you got to have that modern environment, and it's, it's we've spent, I feel like, we've spent the better part of 20 years getting to a stage and then just exploded over the last, 2 or 3 years, particularly in terms of, the things that we're able to do. And it's just made things so much easier from a technology implementer perspective. And it's I was saying earlier that like, so when you go into a customer and you show them this, it's like they go, wow. And it's like,
although it can be confusing, I can tell you, because they're in Teams, but you're showing them actually a SharePoint page or a SharePoint site. So it can be a bit confusing because you're opening all of a sudden a global navigation and they're seeing Teams. So it can, some people can be a bit overwhelmed from where's my documents? I too many things here, but at the end, yeah, it's a great way to organize everything. So this is my comment, and perfect.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. And I it's I think it makes things a lot easier for people, but depending on their their background and skill sets and things, I'm sure that it can be overwhelming for people. I don't doubt that for a second, but I think the overall, I think that it's just giving people a single place to go to basically be able to do the things they need to get their job done is something that's been talked about by so many companies, and Microsoft included, myself included, and it just feels like it's finally getting to the point where it's coming to true fruition in terms of being able to deliver that type of dashboard environment. So
yeah, so you're saying actually the stage is to set up this Viva connection or set it up as a home site, and then actually to configure the navigation. And I think you need to run some PowerShell to connect the Viva connection to add it to the team itself.
Yeah, so that was actually true at one point, but you don't need to, there is no PowerShell involved anymore. You can basically do it all from the SharePoint Admin Center.
Just an app.
Now, and
Okay.
which made things a lot easier. Just not that it was difficult to get set up before, but you're right that it required a PowerShell script, and
you needed icons and all
right.
kinds of things and names and things.
Well, that stuff is still true. So if we go back, if we jump over here to our admin center inside of Teams here, we have these setup policies, and under this, you can basically define what that looks like, and you define here's you're basically add in your Viva Connections app. But when you come down here, you can basically
it's on the top.
I guess maybe it's up top here.
No, it was in the pinned apps. It's the
there
one.
it is. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm still not seeing the option I'm looking for, but you can. I thought I was.
It's okay.
There's
yeah,
a customized
I'm just saying
option that
it's something you do one time.
Yep.
And by the way, I just heard a new feature that will come out. You will be able to have up to 10 home sites in the tenant.
Yeah, I think like May of 23, is the GA on that.
That's yeah, but that's going to give lots of information opportunities for big companies that cannot depend only on one home site.
Exactly. I mean, for these huge companies, that's it's critical. So, but no, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any more sort of questions at all, unless the panel's got any more questions, or if anybody tuning in live on LinkedIn has got any questions. I'm not seeing anything at all just there. I think what we'll do then, because that is the last of 3 presentations this evening, there was going to be a 4th one, but we're going to save that one for another event, I believe. Dan, what I'll get you to do for me, if you play the outro for the event, we should be good to go, I believe.
Yeah, I'll turn this off when I get down to my basement. I've got a couple things to do upstairs, but we'll be there shortly.